Hello friends, and welcome back to the channel. Recently, my husband and I were able to take a trip to Nashville, Tennessee, and we went far beyond Nashville. We went all the way down into Georgia. And on our travels, we were able to visit some Civil War sites. One of those sites being the small town of Franklin, Tennessee, where the 5 worst hours of battle occurred in that small town. We visited the Carter House, but we also visited the Carnton Plantation. Now, if you are planning to visit Franklin, Tennessee, some of these Civil War sites, I'd like to highly encourage you to read this book first. The book is With This Pledge, written by Tamara Alexander. It is based on factual history, based on letters between the governess of the children of the McGavicks who lived at this plantation and a soldier that she tended to after the battle. There are only 2 or 3 characters in this entire book that are not factual. This is written on factual history. It is a fictional work based on historical facts. I wish I would have had the opportunity to read this book before I went on my travels. Now, this book was recommended to me by one of the historians and docents at the plantation when I took a guided tour. Again, I wish I would have known about this book before taking the tour because there are so many references to the home and the people who lived there, and I would have been able to be just a little bit more familiarized with them. Their governess, Lizzie, Carrie McGavick and her husband, John McGavick, their children, Hattie and Winder. It would have been so wonderful. I will share with you that when we visited the plantation, and this is an accurate depiction of the plantation, this part of the home is no longer standing. And I actually asked the historian about an imprint on the bricks. I thought perhaps there had been a window there at one time and had been bricked over. And she relayed to me that on this part of the plantation here, this brick building that's no longer standing, there used to be a door. And the door is where the governess would go from her quarters into the mansion to take care of the children. So it's really neat that this is no longer standing, but the rest of the mansion is still there. And I'll put a couple of pictures in here in my book review as well. So let's get into the book, shall we? Again, written by Tamara Alexander. It is the first book of a trilogy of books related to this family that live on the Carnton Plantation. Very, very interesting historical references during the Civil War time. So let me read the back cover of the book to give you a little insight about what this one is about. What can a woman, a mere governess, do against the scourge of slavery? Elizabeth, they call her Lizzie, Clouston's quietly held principles oppose those of the Southern cause. But when 40,000 soldiers converge on the fields of Franklin, Tennessee, the war demands an answer. The Carnton home, where she is governess, is converted into a Confederate field hospital, and Lizzie is called upon to assist the military doctor with surgeries that determine life or death. Remember, this is historical. These are historical facts. This really happened. Faced with the unimaginable, she must summon fortitude, even as she fears for the life of Townie, her fiancé and lifelong friend. As a young soldier lies dying in Lizzie's arms, she vows to relay his final words to his mother, but knows little more than the boy's first name. That same night, decorated Mississippi sharpshooter Captain Roland Ward Jones extracts a different promise from Lizzie that she intervene should the surgeon decide to amputate his leg. Lizzie is nothing if not a woman of her word, earning the soldiers' respect as she tends to the wounded within Carnton's walls. None is more admiring than Captain Jones, who doesn't realize she is pledged to another. But as Lizzie's heart softens towards the Confederate captain, she discovers that his moral ground is at odds with her own. Now torn between love, principles, and promises made, she struggles to be true to her heart while standing for what she knows is right, no matter the cost. From the pages of history and personal accounts of those who endured the Battle of Franklin, Tamara Alexander weaves the real-life love letters between Captain Roland Ward Jones and Miss Elizabeth Clouston into a story of unlikely romance first kindled amid the shadows of war. This is a very good read. It doesn't read like a Harlequin romance, but it also doesn't read like some of the more factual, dry, to the point Civil War era books that just give you the history without giving you the look into the personal lives of some of the people that were there. Great book. I'm very thankful to the historian who recommended this to me. So if you're going to visit Carnton, and I highly suggest you do if you plan to take a trip down to Tennessee and visit some of the Civil War sites, visit the Carter House, the Lotes House, and the Carnton Plantation, among others. There are so many unique, specific sites to visit. But if you go to Carnton Plantation, you need to read this book. I earmarked a couple pages to share with you some of the content. At this part in the book, this is when a reverend approaches the home and lets the McGavics know the fate of their home in the upcoming days. Colonel McGavick, Mrs. McGavick, I need to inform you that your home has been designated the Division Field Hospital for the Wounded of Loring's Division. On behalf of General Hood and the Great Army of Tennessee, we're grateful for your devotion to the Confederacy and to your fellow countrymen. He solemnly extended his hand, and Colonel McGavick shook it, and in doing so accepted the selection of his home without hesitation. But what else could they do? Armies never requested, they took, even when it was your army. In Chapter 2, we're introduced to Lizzie's first encounter with some of the wounded soldiers. For all the death she had seen in her life, Lizzie had never seen anyone die. She cradled the bloody cheek of the smooth-faced soldier before her. He was only a boy, no more than 13 years old, scarcely half her age. And as he took his last ragged breath, she would have sworn she felt the tug of heaven's tide drawing him home. But it was his final words, whispered with such urgency, that wedged her heart in her throat. The scream of artillery shells and thundering cannon blasts shook the very air around her, and it sounded and felt as though the world were coming to an end. As you read through this book, know that when you visit Carnton, you'll get to see the rooms that these individuals lived in. You'll see their home. You'll go up to young Winder's bedroom, the little boy in this family, and you'll see where doors were taken off of their hinges and placed on makeshift horse saws and used as operating tables. You'll hear stories of young men that as they lie on the floor not knowing if they'll survive or not, all they can think of are their mothers. One story was shared with me about how as a young man lie on the floor, all he could think of was his mother hanging the laundry out on the line and the clothes blowing in the breeze. That's what gave him solace as he lay there wounded. If you take the tour, and it's mentioned here in the book as well, the reality that to this day, over 150 years later, the floors are still stained with blood where the operations took place, where hundreds and hundreds of arms and legs were separated from the injured soldiers and piled high. Now, there's not much talk in this particular book about the graveyard that is here on this plantation, but we did visit that as well. I'll be putting another video out with our visit to that cemetery. But there is a cemetery dedicated to many of the men who passed away during this battle, and it's right here on the Carnton Plantation land. So again, if you get the chance to read this book, it's called With This Pledge by Tamara Alexander. Make sure you have access to the subsequent 2 novels as well. I'm going to check one of them out. I'm going to check the next one out today and I will follow up with a review of that one as well. I located the 2 remaining books from Tamara Alexander that have to do with the Carnton Plantation. One is Christmas at Carnton, and the other is Colors of Truth, again by Tamara Alexander. You know, one thing I really like about Tamara's novels is in the very back, after you have finished the book, she has recipes. Let me show you a couple of them from the book that I just finished and that we're reviewing today with this pledge. And I'll be making some of these. We have Tempe is the cook. And even though her name is not truly Tempe, historically, there was an African-American woman who worked on the plantation. She was not sent away with the other workers before the war came to their front door. She stayed, and she was there during the entire time that this home was used as a field hospital. And throughout this book, you will read about how she would make things for the soldiers to eat while they were in respite in this home following surgery. And so they have some of her recipes here, and I've already got all the ingredients to make this one. So make sure you stay tuned for another video where I make Tempe's skillet fried hoe cakes. I cannot recommend this book enough. I think I finished this book in just 2 or 3 days. It was very, very gripping and involved. The language for the time era is fine. I'm reading another book right now that I'm having a really difficult time getting through because that author has chosen to be a little bit more blunt with some of his wording, using words that are not acceptable in today's society. And Tamara spares us that. She doesn't go into that depth. It may have been reality then, but there's no sense in slapping me in the face with it now, and she's very good about that with this book. So I hope you get the chance to read it. If you've read it, or if you're interested in reading it, or even if you have visited the Carnton Plantation, please make sure you comment below. I'd love to hear from you. If you have any other books that you'd like to recommend, I'd love to read them and give you my feedback on them as well. So that's all for now. I'm going to go grab my other book. And until I see you again, make sure you take care of yourself, take care of each other, and have a blessed day. And thank you for visiting with me. Bye-bye.